And with that, I'd like to hand over to Heikki from BankID, who's going to share with us his case study from Norway.
Hello, microphone is on. Perfect. Hope you all had a nice coffee break, and really humble and excited to be here to talk to you about what we are doing. I'm Heikki. I'm the CTO of BankID, BankAxept AS, and I have Helge with me here as well. He'll be answering all your hard technical questions that I have no chance to answer on my own. First, a very quick note about BankID, BankAxept. BankAxept side is handling all the national payment scheme and all the, being a card processor and doing all of the card transactions in Norway. I will not be talking much about that, but I will be talking about BankID. In Norway, we actually have this very nice number. Currently, 99% of all the adult population in Norway uses BankID on a regular basis. I'll be talking about how we come to that situation and a little bit of our history and how it is used. And then I will go on to talk about how we are modernizing BankID with FIDO2. So, a little bit about BankID in brief. It is a de facto identity scheme in Norway. And it's a multi-purpose EID and signature solution, which is used across all public services and in the private sector. So the BankID are certificates that are issued to end users by the banks. And any person in Norway above 13 years can get a BankID. It is a federated scheme, and the way we gotten here is by all the banks coming together 20 years ago and having a mutual trust and acceptance and agreeing on a common solution for all the banks as an identity solution. Technically, it's based on one common PKI infrastructure. We have set up all the RAs and certificate authorities and a common set of rules and policies. And it is offered to all citizens for free, so they don't have to pay for any of the usage. But it is offered, we make money on having it as on commercial terms to the private sector. So we like to say that we have 18 years of valuable experience in Norway. BankID, the first certificates and first usage were in 2004. And in 2012, it was started being used in the public sector in Norway, the first usage there. And over the last years, we have launched an BankID app and starting our work on modernizing our solution. So I'll get back to that in a little bit. But on average, like it says here, every BankID user uses our solution over 200 times a year. So it's ubiquitous in Norway. And we have, like I said, we have a 99% market penetration. So I'm going to say, what is BankID used for? First and foremost, the original concept was to be authentication and signing solution for all of the Norwegian banks. All of the Norwegian banks got together and made this originally. And it is used for document signing, for all contracts, application for mortgage. You can even file for a divorce using BankID. And it is used across all transaction signings and payment scenarios in Norway. All bank transfers, all digital payments, we're doing 3D Secure with EMV, and also for the new digital payment wallets, use BankID. And one other thing about being ubiquitous is that we can actually provide services to all of the Norwegian public. And in total, over 6,000 public services are available to the Norwegian population using BankID. And everybody uses it for filing taxes, applying for student loans, just checking up on your apartment status and everything. So it's just one of the reasons why we managed to be a fully digital society in Norway. There are also some more fun applications. I'd like to speak about tanning salons. In Norway, we have a regulation that says everybody who visits a tanning salon has to be over 18 years. I think it's a very good idea to protect the kids from getting sunburnt. But tanning salons are actually using BankID to do that age verification. We're also doing stuff with a digital postal service. They are very much using us to get all the digital mail and replacement for the regular postal service. Used for safe document storage. And recently also the car rental agencies have started using digital keys that are verified with BankID. Moving on, I want to speak a little bit about level of assurance, so everybody's on board on how that is in Europe. That level of assurance is defined as degrees of confidence in a claimed identity for a person. Everybody has seen the old comic on the internet, everybody is a dog. In Norway, everybody is a verified true identity. So our original BankID solution is on a level of assurance high. It's been approved and audited under the ADAS regulations. We are also being pre-notified and peer-reviewed under the EID scheme in Norway. I just got an email this morning, actually, that we are being published in the official journal from the European Union during the next week. And on the basis of a BankID certificate is that every customer, every end user is verified with a passport, either through physical presence in one of the bank branches or over the last years verified by our BankID app, where we use liveness detection, passport scanner to actually onboard and re-onboard users. Over the last year, I think we've re-onboarded about 500,000 people using this passport scanner and face verification. Our modernized solution will start out as substantial. It is based on having a BankID high on the bottom, and we will also use the high solution underneath as both a step-up mechanism for that in certain situations, or a fallback if a person doesn't have been onboarded on our modernized solution. And our modernized solution, I'll just get back to that, but preempting it is based on FIDO2, of course. We set about a couple of years ago on how to modernize BankID, and we set some clear goals of how we were going to do that. The first and foremost was to improve the user experience and actually get it a lot faster and easier for the end users to use BankID. BankID High is based on an OTP mechanism. We have used OTP hardware chips for a long time. Now we have transitions to using an app as OTP mechanism, and also passwords is a very much established part of that user experience. But we can see that we can improve it a lot. It's also important for us to ease the integration points for all the merchants and both public services and the bank's endpoints. So we wanted to provide LOA substantial solution first. And this is a very important part that I will get back to a little bit later. Due to the regulations in Europe, it is really important that we have the tokens, the private keys, on device. So we are building a future-proof solution. We have built, sorry. And we also support out-of-brand authentication with a step-up fallback to LOA high. We started out with a preliminary work 2 years ago. And we did a lot of research on all the different use cases, scenarios, and possible solutions that we could find. And I have to say here, for those who saw Doug from Visa's keynote this morning, he showed different white papers from FIDO. And they were very valuable to us, especially the SCA delegation to merchants or wallet providers. As it says here, why FIDO is best positioned to meet the requirements from regulatory authorities, banks, merchants, or wallet providers. So we used those white papers in discussions, both internally with stakeholders, like all of our banks, other potential partners, and to come to our conclusions and decisions. So the conclusion was very clear 2 years ago. FIDO2 and WebAuthn was the best solution to modernize BankID and to reach our goals. We are basing it on open standards, and we have an existing OpenID Connect platform for using, being an integration point for every merchant in Norway. So we continued using that integration also for our modernized solution. And it is enhanced through our existing BankID app. I'll get back to that on the next slide. But we started full implementation last year, and we were very much done to launch this autumn. The BankID app was launched in 2019, and it is used as the OTP app for BankID High. And it's also used as a digital onboarding mechanism, doing a passport scan, face detection, and liveness detection to make sure that a person who gets a BankID certificate is the correct person. And we also saw that the BankID app would be perfect as a companion app for FIDO2. It simplifies onboarding, it simplifies reactivation, and it also provides support for out-of-band authentication. And at least also we have a platform to communicate with our users. So on to a little bit more about the details of our FIDO2 implementation. We use single device attestations. We said keys had to be stored on a hardware, secure enclaves, on both Android and iOS. We need those local attestations and non-discoverable credentials to actually be compliant with PSD2 and a strong customer authentication. And our out-of-band authentication is based on randomly generated challenge words. We use an adjective and a substantive. And we have actually been using those kind of keywords for 13 years on our BankID on mobile solution. And that is so common in Norway that people are actually calling it BankID poetry. I've been told so many times about someone logging in to the net bank and getting a random keyword calling empty account or something like that. And they're just, oh, what is happening? Are they reading all my information here? But that's the good thing about random. Sometimes it's actually very correlating with the real world. So BankID poetry is an established term in Norway. A little bit about our road over the last couple of years. We were ready at the end of last year, and we started our pilot, full-blown pilot in production with the first Norwegian banks. And did FIDO2 web authentication on pilot sites. And before summer, we did a pilot with 3D Secure and more banks on doing transaction verification, fully compliant to PSD2 SCA. And we were ready to launch in September. Challenges. The first and foremost is the challenge of actually getting everything around compliance to be in place and have the regulatory approval for our solution. It's a very, everybody has been working with compliance and regulation now. It's a long drawn process. But then, when we were about to launch, putting the last place in order, we did some testing with iOS 16, the early beta. And somehow Apple had removed the support for local attestation from iOS 15 to iOS 16. Our solution was working perfectly in iOS 15, and suddenly it did not work on iOS 16. We had to do some turnaround, figure out how to move forward. Funnily, and very good timing, we had been in talk with the FIDO Alliance about becoming a member since before summer. And the week before we discovered this, we had actually become a sponsor member of the FIDO Alliance, and also started being involved in some of the working groups. And when we discovered this, there was some work going on a white paper in Europe. We had got involved in that work and discovered that several other relaying parties like Visa, MasterCard, EMV, CZ, which is Jaromir is holding the presentation after us. A lot of people were in the same boat as us. So we have actually now kind of delayed our full-blown launch. I have a working, it is working on Android perfectly. I can show it to anyone who wants. But we are doing some rewrites now on iOS to do launch on both Android and iOS in full time. So since Tim Capali from Microsoft is speaking in the other room now, I just borrow this from him. It is a very good overview of all the different credential types, the attestation matrix. It's easy more or less to bring us up to speed on a common knowledge and have a common discussion points. So we have the different single device credential types, multi-device, and we need, of course, the credential attested. Device public key, DPK, is perfect for us, but I think we can say surely that we are not there yet with DPK. It will take at least 12 months before we can move to that way. So while we're waiting for device public key, we have to have the single device credential attested with local attestation. So what is set here, we must have number 1 now, 5 or 8 in the future. So a little bit about our next steps. We are, of course, when I put in this presentation a couple of weeks ago, I actually thought we would have launched by now, but we are very shortly about to go for launch. But there are some other important things that I want to mention that we are working on. And one of the very much discussed topics, it was discussed in some of the keynotes yesterday, discussed in very different parts of Norway, is a digital outsidership. Currently in Norway, there are 600,000 persons who can't get a BankID. We're talking asylum seekers, we are talking elderly, we are talking visiting citizens. So we are now focusing on how can we help those digital outsiders to be more involved in a fully digital society, which Norway is. We'll also continue our work with digital verified and binding identity. Like I said previously, we've onboarded over 500,000 users with our app so far this year. And we are doing work on the ADAS digital wallet. We're talking about ADAS 2.0, which will have a lot of attention over the next years. And we will, with our work in the FIDO working groups, we will support and help establish multi-device with device public key as well. For we will truly believe that is the best solution in the future. So we do have time for questions. Yep.
Did Apple give you an answer as to why they removed?
Hi, thank you.
The question was, have we gotten a truly honest question from Apple on why they removed it? Do you want to take this?
Yeah, not specifically to us, but Apple have other priorities as they've been communicating publicly, and we're not their priority at the moment. So yeah, I don't know if there are other ways of saying it, but that's how I perceive it at least.
I can add to that we are fully on board with a passwordless future, and we truly believe in the same vision of passkeys. That is a really strong message going forward. But you also want all the major platforms to support local attestations so that we can actually have a regulated and compliant solution. So we believe in passkeys, but we believe that we also need to have local attestation and users be able to store the credentials on the device. I think it's still on the FIDO website. It is one of the selling points of FIDO2 on device. Yeah? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't see you in the light.
Oh, okay, I just want to quickly follow up on the question. The change is related to passkeys, right? And you also mentioned that the requirement is that the keys have to be local earlier from government. So how are you seeing this working with passkeys, where pretty much the keys are roaming, you don't necessarily have control?
Yeah, the thing is, the way Apple did it was they started treating WebAuthn keys as passkeys, and thus making them syncable to the iCloud by default. And that is something that we can't provide a compliant solution, knowing that persons are sharing their phones with different parts of the family and everything. So, yeah, Christian, probably some.
Quick question. Yeah, I mean, what you just said there is interesting. You mentioned earlier that one of the next steps is making this work on iPhones or iOS. Yeah. So how do you square those two things? I mean, if you can't get the credentials bound to the device, what is the plan?
I can answer. We're using the app, the companion app. So we always need to do an app switch, and then we use a web view that's just an overlay for the app, and we inject an equivalent. So we implement our own kind of assertions, not public assertions, but we can control both ends. So we need a custom implementation, and it's a more clunky user experience because you always need app switch, but that's what we'll have to do for the time being.
It would be great to get that like as part of a slide, as like, hey, here's what we now have to do in order to make this work, right? I think, yeah. I mean,
yeah, that's so fresh that when we put in the slides 3 weeks ago, we haven't fully ready with that solution. So, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's personal feeling. It feels like a centralized ID for every personal thing. So, what if the people have the concern like if my account got hacked, then you have access to all my stuff? How do you mitigate these kind of concerns?
We have a very extensive anti-fraud solution. And accounts, we don't see much of hacked accounts per se. We do see some close relations that maybe a husband or a wife can do transactions for that person. So we are very clear that your BankID is your BankID. I wish I would have put in a commercial we did last year with where we got 2 Unlimited to actually go and say, no, 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 don't share your BankID. But when that happens, we have very quick takedown procedures. So the certificates are blocked very quickly as soon as we suspect any fraudulent behavior.
Hi, are you seeing any third parties that are creating a new identifier derived from BankID?
Yeah, we do see that. It's some of the third parties, we actually have that in regulations that we don't approve of that. But we do see that sometimes, and then we just go into dialogue with them and how can we solve that. And we believe that our biometric solution based on FIDO actually improves the user experience so much that it would be easier for them to just use that instead of using a derived scheme. Yeah. Yep.
Just to follow up on another question, previous question, one of the reasons that people share account credentials is because what they really want is delegation. They want to be able to enable, a father or a child to manage a parent's account, for example, when they're older. Is that an area you guys are tackling yet in a systemic way? I mean, I imagine different institutions have their own. But.
Yeah, we know that is part of the digital outsidership, of course. There are solutions with that, digital solutions with that within Norway, where you can get governorship of another person, elderly or sick persons. But it's a very bureaucratic procedures. It's not something we control. But when someone gets that governorship, they can actually be delegated for that person. But it's something that we really are working closely with the Norwegian government on having a much better solutions on. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Heikki. That was a very interesting presentation. And we'll be back shortly with the next presentation.
Thank you.